recent announcement of shortlisted candidates to head up the NSE. When are we going to get clarity in terms of who is going to be running the Nigerian Stock Exchange soon? And what sort of criteria are you applying?
Well, first of all, we have an interim administration that we had put together for the Nigerian Stock Exchange. And one of the mandates of the interim administration, which includes the interim head of council and the interim administrator who's here in the studio today as well, is to ensure that there's a credible, transparent process that brings out the best team, management team for the Nigerian Stock Exchange. We're very pleased with some of the feedback that we have gotten about the process that they have gone through. There was a firm that was selected to work with them in trying to go through the selection process. That firm has worked with them at different stages, and I understand right now they're at the final stages, and we hope that by the end of the year that they'll be able to share with us the results of that selection process. Because it is important that the team comes on board as quickly as possible, because there's a lot that
so
the exchange has to do.
there's a sense of urgency. You use the word the best team possible. What does best mean to you?
Best in terms of competence, those who understand how to run an exchange. In terms of the areas that they're looking at a CEO, an executive director for listings, an executive director for operations, market operations, and an executive director for IT. What we would like is to have candidates that are the best you can have in the world, because we're trying to build a world-class market, and the exchange is a visible symbol of a world-class market.
Mr. Ikazoboh, your views on this one, just to add to what Ms. Oteh has said. You've been managing the stock exchange now on an interim level. What have been the challenges during this transition?
Well, one of the major challenges is the fact that I'm interim. and therefore, what you expect is that people will expect that you cannot take a concrete or long-term decision. But the good news is that I've been given a free hand by Securities and Exchange Commission to make sure that I carry out a process to meet the mandates given to us. So the interim council, or the council of the exchange, and myself, the council headed by the interim head of council, have been working hard to ensure that we have a process that will bring out the best. And the process involved, advertising both locally and globally. And we have applications from a lot of Nigerians that are working in exchanges around the world who have applied. And we've started the process. And like the DG said, we are almost at the end of it. And as soon as we complete that process, before the end of this month, we should be able to share the shortlisted candidate with the Securities and Exchange Commission.
Ms. Oteh, I think one of the biggest issues you faced is that of restoring confidence in the capital markets of Nigeria, in the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and introducing governance. And here I'm talking about the relationship between the CEO of the exchange and the council, and not having a confluence of values. How have you dealt with that?
Well, first, as I said earlier, it is important that we build a world-class market. And one of the elements of a world-class market is market integrity. And the exchange is a visible symbol of any capital market, and therefore ensuring that the exchange is a role model for the market in every sense of that word is extremely important. We had concerns with respect to corporate governance, with respect to the capacity of the council to play its oversight role, with respect to management to play its own role. Some of it resulted in a late submission. In fact, a submission only when the interim administrator came on board of the audited financial statements for 2009, which is a statutory requirement that it must come to us within 6 months of when it is ready. So it is important, because the exchange is a role model for the market, that in issues of corporate governance, that there is no question about those issues with the exchange. Because I do believe that for any market, for investors to feel confident in that market, it must be of the highest integrity, whether it be the exchange, whether it be the capital market operators or other players. in that particular capital market.
I mean, another dimension, and you're referring to it here, is that of regulating the stock brokerages, because we're told that in Nigeria it's been too lax, too many infractions that then related to the market crash of 2009. How are you addressing that issue?
Well, I will start by saying that it's not a fair statement to say that to have a broad brush approach on the stock brokerage firms in Nigeria. As you have in anywhere in the world, there are always people who do the right thing. There are others who think, particularly if the cost of doing the wrong thing is not high enough, who do the wrong thing. What we have done at the Securities and Exchange Commission is communicate in a very visible manner that we have zero tolerance for anything that's improper. With respect to some of the fallout of the financial crisis and some of the challenges of a lot of capital raising that came from the banks, what we have done is go through a very rigorous first-class investigation process where we've come out with allegations against 260 individuals and entities, not just brokerage firms, people who have just participated in market abuses, and we have taken them to the Investment and Securities Tribunal. What we're seeking from the Investment and Securities Tribunal are declaratory orders such that any illegally gained profits are disgorged, and where possible, that investors are restituted. That's extremely important for investor confidence, because as an investor, you want to be sure that you will not be defrauded of your funds, and that if you make decisions to invest in a market, that those decisions will be driven by the decisions you've made, and not because someone is going to defraud you of your assets.
Lumkile Mondi, you're a potential investor through various private equity vehicles that the IDC is invested in, looking to enter Nigeria. The governor of the CBN has been lauded for these widespread reforms. So has Ms. Oteh and the work that she's doing with the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Are you convinced?
We're very much convinced because we think that, you know, you've got to go through pains. It's a process of development, and in fact, the work that they've done, I think, is sending a very positive message, particularly in terms of Nigeria mobilizing finance, because for Nigeria to strengthen its industrial base, to make sure that we can look at it to be the biggest economy, given the depth of skill that's in the economy and the resource endowment that's there. The financial markets need to world class, as Ms. Oteh has argued and presented to us, and therefore we're very encouraged, and we hope that through the proper governance that will come through the stock exchange as well, that Nigeria really achieves and leads in the African continent.
Mr. Ikazoboh, let's get your views here. A broader issue beyond governance of the NSE is that of widening the capital markets in Nigeria, creating alternative trading platforms for unlisted companies to come onto the market and raise capital, for small and medium enterprises to do that. What remains to be done?
Well, enlightenment is the first thing. People are supposed to be aware that they can raise funds from the capital market, especially the small and medium enterprises. You know, the entrepreneurial skills of Nigerians. Many Nigerians, you know, are really itching to raise money to be able to fulfill their dreams. And what the Nigerian Stock Exchange is doing is following the restructuring. The next thing we need to do is to carry out an enlightenment campaign to the rural areas, to the states, and amongst institutions, amongst trade groups and things. That way, we'll be able to capture that aspect of the population that should, you know, own the economy of the country. We want to just make sure that the economy of Nigeria is in the hands of Nigerians.
Ms. Oteh, I mean, the CBN governor has argued for a targeted focus. He keeps on reiterating the fact that agriculture now constitutes the backbone of this economy, and that agricultural producers, farmers, millers, processors need to have various capital options. So here we're talking about things like agricultural stocks and derivatives for grain products, also supporting manufacturers, because, you know, there's so many manufacturers in Nigeria, but it constitutes less than 5% of GDP. So just dealing with those discrepancies, how much work are you giving to some of those areas of new investment potential?
Oh, it's extremely important. I mean, we've been a country that has depended on the oil and gas sector in this form for its lifetime, for 50 years. And my view is that the capital markets are truly the enabler for diversifying our economy. And if we diversify our economy, if we focus more on agriculture, if we focus more on the manufacturing sector, we're going to be able to create jobs. We're going to be able to ensure that there is much more financial inclusion, that many more people participate in the economy of Nigeria, because they can either raise funds for their businesses, which is probably the way that we would only be able, we'll be successful in creating jobs, but they can also be able to create wealth for themselves by participating in the stock market. And we need to deal with it on different levels. We need to provide platforms for these companies to be able to raise money, but we also need to have product offerings that will allow investors to be able to participate in the success or potential success of some of these companies. You've talked about the importance of agricultural derivatives. We hope and are working with the Abuja Securities and Commodities Exchange to focus more on how they can realize value to develop futures and develop commodity derivatives. We're also focusing very, very much on the fixed income market, on the bond market. We've over the last 10 years built a world-class sovereign bond market. What we would like to be able to do is also to develop a first-class corporate bond market, a first-class subnational bond market, and there have been some changes from a regulatory point of view that support these markets, and we've seen interest and participation in these markets.
I'm glad you're mentioning the bond market, because a lot of attention now is on the asset management company, the AMCON, and we know that they're busy now with recapitalizing the rescued banks, mergers and acquisitions, but they're also going to be launching bonds to the value of 3 trillion naira in various tranches over some time next year. The question is, can the bond markets of Nigeria through the NSE handle that load?
We're very excited about that possibility, because as you know, we have a pension sector that has transformed itself. Today we have about $12 billion, give or take, in pension assets that are looking for assets that are usually the kinds of assets that life insurance companies and pension funds would invest in. In fact, the Pension Commission is reviewing the investment regulation to allow them to be able to participate in some of these other transactions. So it's important that AMCON is coming to the market with bonds so that we can have more diversified products in the fixed income space. But of course, I must declare that I sit on the board of AMCON, so I'm converted, yes.
Mr. Ikazoboh, your views on AMCON coming onto the market?
Yes, AMCON is going to help most of our brokers. Presently, most of our brokers, we are actually hot as a result of the funds they took from banks, which they just couldn't meet up on, and the loans and facilities they took, which probably AMCON will be taking over, will help strengthen their capital base, and in that way, the capital market will be revitalized again.
Lumkile, just moving beyond the NSE per se and talking about Nigeria, we know that there's been a postponement in the launch of the Eurobond, valued at $500 million internationally, and it's rather due to market conditions in Europe as opposed to Nigeria itself. But for many people looking at Nigeria and whether to bring in their money through capital flows into Nigeria, there is this perception of risk, political risk ahead of the elections, and risk of Nigerian debt, because there's just a sense that the country hasn't been able to honor a lot of its commitments. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, in the past, yes. I think what we're seeing here this evening is a commitment towards creating a platform that's transparent, that will make people's investment much safer, and therefore it's a Nigerian transition. And I think as an investor, we have to take a long-term perspective. I see in South Africa, I've seen what's been done by the central bank, I'm seeing what's been done by the security regulator, and I'm very positive that, going forward, Nigeria is going to surpass us as South Africa, us having really deepened the capital markets here, that if South Africa doesn't move quicker on policies and decision to make sure that, as Nigeria is investing in infrastructure and developing its economy, we do the same, that we're going to lag far behind, and in that process, lose some of the skill that is here, that Nigerians have come here, they're all going to go back home, and in the process, we'll have our economy really struggling. So therefore, it's a challenge. I think Nigerians' commitment are putting a challenge to South Africa that if we want to continue being a solid partner with Nigerians, we need to move at the same pace as they're doing.
You want to add?
I was just going to add that in terms of Nigeria's debt ratios, they're some of the best in the world because of some of the macroeconomic reforms that have been previously done, where we had the opportunity many years ago for reducing the external debt of Nigeria to almost nothing, to about, I think, 5.2% of GDP.
Right.
In fact, the objective for the Eurobond transaction was really to create a benchmark internationally for companies and subnationals that may look to borrow in the international capital markets.
Let's look at the year that has been, Mr. Ikazoboh, and I'm talking here about the listings of 2010. Lots of fanfare around Dangote Cement. What do you make of the quality of some of the listings, and what are your expectations for 2011?
Well, the Nigerian Stock Exchange has a process. We have a listing requirement, and we enforce our listing requirements, and therefore all the companies that are listed go through a process to ensure that international standards are met before they are listed on the floor of the exchange. Talking particularly on the Dangote listing is particularly significant because it brought in about 20% of our capitalization, and therefore, it was made a significant listing, and we truly welcome it. And it's a way of attracting or inviting other companies to see that a significant company of that nature had to come into our capital market at this time.